Let's talk more about the summit with Kansas Republican Senator Jerry Moran back in Kansas City tonight. Sir, thank you for your time. And our thoughts are with your community in Kansas City after the shooting of those police officers earlier today. And we certainly hope everything turns out after that. So thank you here. You've listed a lot of warnings.
Thank you for that.
Well, yeah, what should President Trump expect in 12 or 14 hours here?
Well, if our visit, the congressional visit to Moscow, to Russia, is any indication, you'll see a lot of denial, obfuscation, long conversations, and no admission of any errors on the part of Russian government officials or the country. So what I hope happens is that the president, I think this is especially useful, this visit now. I really do believe that the two presidents meeting is a good thing. But I think now President Trump, with the indictments that were just recently announced, has the ability to demonstrate to the Russians that the interference in our elections was real, confirmed by a series of indictments. And I would expect the conversation to be about the nature of our relationship. If the Russians want it to be improved, that we need to have no more interference in elections in 2018 or 2020, a recognition that Crimea and Ukraine are important to us and the world, and that those borders, sovereignty matters, and a desire to see that we get a plan in Syria that brings this bloodbath to an end. So lots of issues. But I think the most important thing is that we'll see the leaders sitting down, trying to figure out if there is a path forward on any of them.
Yeah, you just described your trip briefly there to Russia a few weeks ago. You sound frustrated in your voice, but yet it's described as a breakthrough for the first time in 5 years. How come, along with Ambassador John Huntsman, Senator?
We had a in my view, very useful visit. What I would say is that it may be a message to President Trump that the Russian media and government officials described our visit totally different than it was. I don't believe the Russians when they say they didn't interfere in our elections. Americans should not believe Russians when they describe the meetings we had as inconsequential, as easy, as nothing was presented to the Russians that was any kind of threat. I don't mean a threat in a military sense, but a threat in whether or not we're going to have better relations. So I would encourage the president to have other Americans surrounding him in his meeting with President Trump. The Russians are propagandists. They can say, and their media will report whatever they say. And it would be nice to have others in the room who can then reaffirm what President Trump has to say about what transpired in the meeting. It was a very useful meeting.
We don't believe that'll be the case tomorrow. I would suggest to our viewers watch three things. You know, how is that one-on-one session relayed to the outside world? Watch the body language during the press conference that will follow, and watch Chris Wallace's interview with Vladimir Putin and see how he describes that meeting. And then you can match that up with President Trump's description. I think those are your three markers here in about 12 or 14 hours, sir. Do you agree with that?
Well, again, I would be very cautious about what Russians say about any meeting, but I do hope that good things come from this one-on-one conversation. And we'll see what the press reports, what the Russian press and what the world press reports on the nature of those meetings based upon what those two individuals say about it. Good point about body language as you watch the two leaders together.
No question. Same thing with Chairman Kim, as we saw in Singapore a few weeks ago. I think everybody has their wish list about tomorrow. Here is Chuck Schumer's wish list that came out earlier today. Press Putin on the election meddling that you just talked about. Send indicted Russians to the U.S. for trial, which Trey Gowdy mentioned earlier today as well, and keep the Russia sanctions in place. My guess is the sanctions will not move tomorrow. Do you feel otherwise?
I don't know what the president will say about sanctions, but the message we delivered as members of Congress, as the United States Senate in Russia, is your behavior has to change before those sanctions will be lifted. And a significant portion of those sanctions can only be lifted by congressional action, not just by a president alone. The thing I would add to that list, be great if those indicted individuals were extradited to the United States, but the thing I would add to that list is use this as an opportunity to tell the Russians that the European-American alliance is strong and use this as an opportunity to reassure NATO that the United States and NATO are allied in our efforts to hold back Russian aggression coming the direction of Europe. We have spent, with FY19, the budget that we're talking about in Congress right now, appropriates $6.5 billion, and we have 34,000 troops in Europe under the European Command, with other soldiers and Marines rotating in and out, Navy personnel as well, designed to reassure our allies that we are with them because of Russian efforts to pull us apart. I hope the president reassures Europeans that we're with them, and I hope that he makes that clear to Putin that this is an alliance that works in the best interest, not just of Europe, but in the best interest of the security and future of the United States of America.
Senator, thank you for your time. Jerry Moran, the Republican from Kansas, with us in Kansas City tonight. Thank you, sir, very much.
Thank you, Bill.